friends, it's Erin here, and this is a new series that I'm starting called Confessions of a Hybrid Athlete Part 1. I know it's been a little while, and I ran a 10K on New Year's, and I haven't gotten the chance to talk about it. So let's talk about it. We have a lot to cover today. Also, I am notoriously bad at just taking footage or pictures when I'm in the zone or in an event like the 10K, as I discovered. So sorry I don't have a ton of footage or pictures to show you guys, but it was an incredibly rewarding experience, and I just wanted to let you know how it went. So this was my first 10K. It was my second official race. I've ran a 5K before, but it was many years ago. And when I ran the 10K, I told myself I wasn't necessarily going in for the fastest time. You know, I was just going in to have fun, to enjoy it, to see if I wanted to do more. And I suspected that I would, and I do. I got about an hour and 8-minute 10K in, which is about average. It was like average across the board between all the females and all the females in my age category. And I was satisfied with that. I was really happy with that. I really enjoyed the atmosphere of the race, the vibes, if you will. And everyone was in a good mood. There were complete strangers cheering me on. There were 70, 80-year-old people passing me. It was just phenomenal, like the whole experience. They started us out with the 5K runners, and then the half marathon racers raced earlier. They got a head start, which makes sense. It was a little bit gloomy that day. It wasn't necessarily, you know, the nicest day in the world, but I appreciated that because I don't mind it being drizzly when I run, a little bit rainy. And after they had like a little band and a little award ceremony and stuff, but my husband came to support me, and then after that we headed out and went to grab a bite to eat, and I ate a ton of food after. I was so hungry. So hungry. And it was a great experience, like I said, overall. When we got out of the gate with all the people doing the 5K, it was chaos. Like just everyone trying not to trip over each other, everyone figuring out where they're gonna go and what their pace is. Some people start off too fast and slow down. I started off too slow and ended up speeding up. I started a little bit too far back in the pack, and that's a mistake I think I'm gonna be cognizant of with the half marathon that I'm gonna be doing in July. It's coming up soon. We'll get to that. But I quickly found out when I was racing that I was overstriding. And that's never been an issue for me before, but I think the adrenaline kicked in and I just started going. Like I wasn't thinking about pace, I wasn't thinking about what I should have been doing. I just wanted to go. And next time I'll try to rein myself in a little bit more and take a deep breath and say, okay, let's figure this out. Let's have some strategy here. I did not have any strategy whatsoever. It was just crazy. So with that said, because I was overstriding, my knee did start to hurt a little bit. My right knee specifically, and it actually hurt for a few weeks after, so I took a little bit of time off from running because of that. It affected my foot as well, like my foot started to go numb a little bit. Nothing is seriously wrong with it, I just need to take some time off after. But lesson learned, don't overstride, don't let the adrenaline get the best of you. The other aspect to this is that for whatever reason, I know what reason. I chose to wear my fanny pack, which isn't necessarily like a runner's belt, it's a true fanny pack. And I'm not a huge fan of wearing this fanny pack when I run, so I don't know why I chose to wear it, but it kept riding up into my stomach, which was incredibly annoying because I kept pushing it back down, and it didn't allow me to be in the zone mentally as much as I wanted it to be. I usually run with a vest, but in the back of my mind I was like, well, I don't really need to run with a vest for a 10K. You know, like there were water stations and stuff, like I don't need to be running with a bladder, it's not that serious. But now I kind of wish I had just taken the bladder out and run with the vest, because I prefer the vest so much more than the fanny pack because it stays still for the most part. It's just more comfortable, and so next time, no matter the race distance, I'm gonna choose to wear a vest. Or maybe I'll just suck it up and finally buy a runner's belt. Keep you updated. Probably the best. Outside of that, everything went really well, and I really enjoyed the experience. So as I mentioned, I want to do a half marathon, and so I am signed up for one in July, but I've taken some time off from running while snowboard season is still here. So I might have mentioned this previously, but I am a huge skier and snowboarder. I grew up in Maine, so I grew up going to the mountains and skiing with my grandmother specifically, and last year I decided to try snowboarding and really get into it, and got my first board and all that good stuff. And I've been having a blast with it. Since we moved from Texas to California, I've been really enjoying being within a drivable distance to a mountain with snow. Southern California, you know, the snow's like questionable sometimes, but it's a lot of fun. And so I have a lot of fun snowboarding, and I didn't necessarily want to put the pressure on myself to do snowboarding, weightlifting, and running all at the same time. I wanted to be able to take a step back, enjoy myself, and also snowboarding does come with a pretty high risk of injury, and so I just didn't want to overdo it. I've also taken a few pretty hard falls snowboarding, honestly, although I haven't broken anything or seriously injured anything, and I thought that might happen. The last thing you want to do, obviously, is take a hard fall in the park or whatever and then go and run like 10 miles the next day. It's just not comfortable, right? Your body needs time to rest and recover, not only from an athleticism perspective, but from an injury perspective. And so I chose to just take that time off, and it's been worth it. So training for the half marathon. So I mentioned that I am going to be doing my first half marathon, and I'm super excited about that. It's in July in Santa Monica. I'll start training in March, and I'm going to give myself a full 16 weeks to train for this. I don't think I need that long, to be quite honest with you, but because I've taken some time off from snowboarding, I just want to make sure that I have plenty of time to train for this half marathon, and that I can even go beyond that half marathon distance. For me, knowing that I can go beyond the distance that I'm racing for just allows me to be a little bit more comfortable when I go and enter that race scene. And I can tell myself, you know, you've done more mileage than this. You can definitely do this. You know, it gives me that confidence boost that I feel that I need. So I'm looking forward to starting that training. But with that said, because it's longer distances, more time into running when snowboarding's ending and all of that good stuff, it does mean that my training schedule is going to look a bit different from where it is now. Right now, I am weightlifting about 5 times per week. I have a mobility day in there too, so I'm doing your standard push and pull day, an additional upper body day, lower body, and full body day. And if that sounds like a lot of upper body, it's because it is, but my coach and I decided to implement a lot of upper body on purpose because, as I mentioned in my last video, I have lost a lot of muscle mass and a lot of strength this past year in 2023, just from life circumstances and from me getting running and taking a lot of time off from weightlifting. And so I lost that definition and that mass and that strength up here, and we wanted to gain that back. And so far so good, like definitely paying off like so much. It's been so worth it. Now I have to focus on doing that and implementing my runs. I typically run at least 1 5K a week still already in addition to that weightlifting. But when I start training for that half marathon, I'm going to have to incorporate different sessions for running and weightlifting. Typically what I do for shorter distances or for easy runs is I'll weightlift and then power through and then do my run after. But really I have to prioritize my runs now first because I want to make sure I'm putting in all that effort that I can into my distance run so I am prepared for that half marathon. Typically that's what I recommend anyone do, is that they prioritize whichever sport they're most focused on first. That being said, I'm also trying to increase my personal best for deadlift, and I have been working on that, and that's a whole other story because I just tried to PR last night and it did not go as planned. We'll get to that. Point being, I'm probably going to have to implement morning and evening sessions eventually, especially with those longer distances. With those longer distances, I'll have to run first thing in the morning, especially as it gets warmer out, and then do my weightlifting at night. That's typically preferable, but that also means I really have to make more time for sleep because your girl, like, she struggles getting her sleep, okay? It's not a good scene all the time, and it's not for lack of trying. My sleep hygiene is generally pretty good, but I just really struggle for a lot of reasons to get good quality sleep. That's going to be so much more important on top of my nutrition. In addition to that, I also have a lot of traveling coming up this spring. So I am looking forward to traveling, but that is going to make training with weightlifting harder specifically. I can pretty much run anywhere I go, but when it comes to finding a gym, that gets to be a little bit more difficult. Keep you updated there. But it's gonna be a lot of fun, so I'm really looking forward to that. So a lot of people ask me, Erin, are you gonna do a marathon? I'm like, yeah, that's the goal. That's what we're working up to right now. For this year, my goal is to run that half marathon, and then next year to run my first marathon. From there, I'm going to decide whether or not I want to increase my marathon pace, or if I want to drop back down to shorter distances and again improve my pace. I am pretty slow. or if I want to go and do an ultra marathon. Right now, I'm actually leaning towards the ultra marathon, but I think that marathon, that first one, is going to hit me like a ton of bricks, and the recovery for that is going to be pretty significant. So we're going to feel that out first and then go from there and figure out whether I want to do an ultra or not. I really admire distance runners who do ultra marathons and, you know, the extreme stuff, because honestly, if you can just get it done, like if you can complete that type of race, that says so much about your personal health and your fitness level. It's admirable to me to watch people well even into their, you know, 40s and 50s and 60s doing that type of event, that type of race. That's what I aspire to be. That would be great if I could accomplish that. That being said, I still want to maintain my weightlifting abilities and my strength in the gym. So what's important to note when you're a hybrid athlete and you do a cross between running and weightlifting, and I incorporate some bodybuilding accessories as well, is that you have to understand that your training is going to be a little bit suboptimal for both, and you have to be okay with that. It's okay to set goals in both arenas as long as you can accept it's going to take longer to reach your goals, because the reality is you're training your body in two different ways that oppose each other from a performance perspective, right? When you're an endurance runner, you are training so that your body can be sleek and fast and go the distance and do a lot for hours at a time. But when you're a power lifter and you're doing a PR in deadlifts, you know, you want to just go hard and fast that one time. And you want to be able to pull that weight that you're trying to attempt and just do it on that first try. They're totally different worlds, right? And that's not to say that you can't do both, but you do have to accept that it's going to take more work, more effort, and just more attention to detail with your performance and your training, which is why I hired a coach even as a personal trainer, because I was like, I cannot do this all on my own. I just can't. Training in this way as a hybrid athlete also reminds myself that I am a person outside of my work. So I'm a PhD student, right? And I work full time. And I have a small business on top of that. I make content like this. All of those things, especially as a PhD student, amount to being so invested in your career and that area of your life that you start to neglect other areas of your life. And that's obviously not a good thing. So for me, training as a hybrid athlete and pouring that time and energy into my health, in my performance, reminds me that I am someone outside of my work, right? And it sounds simple, and it sounds like you should be able to do that without going to that extreme, like without doing, you know, working out 5-6 days a week. But it's also a stress reliever, right? So I can know that when my laptop's dying, for example, I'm like, okay, it's time to go for a walk, or I can work a quick run in. And that's going to help me not only mentally when I come back to my work, but it reminds me physically that I am taking care of my body and my health while investing a lot of time and energy into my career and in my future career. I really appreciate that aspect of training, and I know a lot of other PhD students as well that, you know, they tend to do one extreme with the other. They're super sedentary, or they run and they work out all the time. I tend to be on the all the time spectrum. So if you know a PhD student, be thinking of them. Just say a prayer for them today. So I mentioned that I went for a PR in deadlift last night, and I posted about this on my Instagram, but essentially when I went up, I called Melinda, my coach, and I was like, you know, I'm feeling a PR in deadlift today. Like, I've been going strong, I've been doing good, nutrition's good, I feel like I can pull 200 pounds. And a lot of people will say, well, 200 pounds isn't a lot. And I'm like, well, no, I mean, technically not. If you're in the powerlifting scene, that's definitely not a lot. But the average woman can deadlift, but somewhere between like 160 to 200 pounds, more around the like 190 spectrum, depending on your size and body weight ratio and your age and all of those different factors and variables. For me, because I am getting back into weightlifting after having a lot of time off last year, my strength decreased drastically. So my former PR from a couple years ago was 275, and that's what I'm working back up to now. That 200 is a mental hurdle for a lot of people, including myself. And I walked into the gym last night, ready to go, ready to do it, and I just could not get that barbell off the floor. I could not pull it for the life of me. I started at 205, I went down to 200, then I went to 190, and I couldn't get any of them up. Finally, on 185, I got it up, honestly, pretty easily. Yeah, and it wasn't my brightest moments. What's funny is that people on Instagram really appreciated the failure because it got a lot more engagement than a lot of my reels usually do. And I will get there. I've pulled more than 200 before. I will pull more than 200 again. I have complete confidence and faith in that. I just need to trust the process. And I was frustrated that, you know, I couldn't do it yesterday. Because again, I know what I'm capable of, and I'm capable of pulling more than that. But failure teaches you a lot of important life lessons, and it teaches you how stubborn you can be. It teaches you how you can persevere and how you need to trust the process and have faith that, you know, God is in control and He is sovereign. And it sounds silly talking about deadlifts, but He is in control, and He will guide you and give you the strength that you need to persevere and work towards your goals. And that's where I'm approaching deadlifts right now. I'm looking forward to gaining that strength back, but it goes back to, like I said, you have to understand that training as a runner and a weightlifter has competing interests at times, and it might take me a little bit longer to get to that 200 than I initially thought. That's something I've come to accept after going through a phase of being pretty angry about it and throwing a slight temper tantrum. We'll get there with time. And so finally, nutrition. What does my nutrition look like? How do I eat? I also mentioned a little bit about this in the last video, but I tend to eat a lot of fats in ratio to my carbs and proteins, and then my carbs and protein are about equal in terms of, you know, percent, or I eat about 30% of both. I still approach my training with both in mind. However, I've gotten to the point where I'm pretty good about intuitively eating, and so for me, when I'm traveling, I'm gonna be focused more on my nutrition when I'm traveling, honestly. Because when I'm traveling, I tend to eat a lot of things that I wouldn't normally eat, and honestly drink more than I normally would, alcohol specifically. So for Lent this year, I gave up alcohol and, you know, forfeited that. And when I go into my seasons of traveling, I do anticipate that I'll be drinking off and on, you know, when I'm going out with my family or friends, but maybe less than I normally would. It's the difference between 1 beer versus 2. Just approaching it a little bit more in moderation. And then the other thing I'm focused on is I do have legitimate gluten sensitivity. It's basically like a minor allergy, but when I eat a lot of gluten, it builds up and it makes my stomach incredibly upset, which makes me miserable and grumpy while I'm traveling. So I'm like, why am I putting myself through this? And on top of that, it definitely affects my performance in the gym. And I find myself trying to justify it a lot because I'm like, well, I'm not celiac, like I can get away with it. And it's like, just because you can doesn't mean you should. You know, so I really need to rein that in. And when I'm traveling, my family's great about it. My family understands, and they know, like, you know, okay, you can't have gluten, like we'll use gluten-free pasta and pasta salad or whatever. They're absolutely phenomenal about understanding that. However, I need to be better about it during certain seasons of my life. You know what I'm saying? And for those of you who are lactose intolerant, I feel like it's the same thing. I have a few friends that are lactose intolerant and they eat dairy all the time and they complain about how their stomach is upset. Yeah, that's me. So just being more mindful of that as I go into this next season and phase of training. And then of course, this wouldn't be a Nation of Strength video if I didn't add in something about these new sweatshirts. This is our Clothed in Strength sweatshirt, as you can see. We'll be launching our storefront within the next month or two, and hopefully having more of these come out. We'll also have different colors. We'll have a Power and Strength sweatshirt, and really looking forward to getting that up and running. I know a lot of people have really looked forward to seeing that come to fruition for the past year, so thank you for those of you who have supported me along the way. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you in the next one for Confessions of a Hybrid Athlete Part 2. Bye guys.